So when you look at a traditional power provider, they generate electricity. If it doesn't get used, it kind of just goes out on the grid and just gets wasted. And so what we've gone and done is negotiated with these power companies to say, hey, we'll take that and use it instead of it going to waste. And then if there's a draw on it that they need it for consumers or everyone else, we'll curtail our equipment and return that power to the grid so it gets used.
This episode of the Cloud Accounting Podcast was recorded at the Oracle NetSuite SuiteWorld Conference in September of 2022. To learn more about NetSuite and the SuiteWorld Conference, visit netsuitesuiteworld.com.
Welcome to the Cloud Accounting Podcast. I am David Leary.
And I am Blake Oliver.
And we are at day 2 of SuiteWorld, Oracle's NetSuite SuiteWorld Conference. And we get to start talking to CFOs and finance leaders at companies today.
Customers of NetSuite.
This
is why we're here. I mean, it was great talking with Evan Goldberg yesterday. It's always fun meeting the Oracle people, talking to the NetSuite people. But, the customers, that's why we're here. So let's talk to our first customer.
Our first customer is Jason Sheehan, CPA, Director of Finance at Griid, Griid.
Griid. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So tell us, in a few sentences, what is Griid?
So Griid is a US-based infrastructure company that focuses on Bitcoin mining. And so we are in the process of going public via a SPAC, which was announced this past November. So we are growing fast and obviously in a nice market that's, full of turmoil right now in terms of Bitcoin volatility. So fun to be a part of.
Well, this is great. These are two of my favorite things. Cryptocurrency and SPACs.
Right.
We love to talk about
and ESG.
Those. And ESG.
Yeah.
ESG's on the agenda too? How is that connected?
Oh, because our company is actually focused on being carbon neutral. So as of today, and we're not doing that via offsets, credit offsets, or anything like that. We're actually truly carbon neutral in terms of our power generation. So what that means is, we're trying to be, we're at about 74% today and are targeting 90% by the end of 23 to be carbon neutral. And we do that through how we source our energy. And that comes in the form of hydropower. We're exploring nuclear options, as well as traditional electricity. We're buying the excess kind of off the grids. And then if they need it back, we kind of curtail our equipment, restore the electricity back so it doesn't get wasted.
So Blake and I want to start a Bitcoin mining factory.
Yeah.
It's going to have all these huge expenses involved, and we're going to put solar panels because we live in the Arizona desert. So, so it's got to be carbon neutral. I'll come to you to get the money to build this. Financing, is that
or do you build these facilities?
We build these, so we're a fully vertically integrated company, and so what that means is we actually build what we call pods, which is where we house all of our mining equipment. Racks, cabling, the actual computers themselves, and we don't have any customers, so we mine our own, and that's how we generate our revenue, and that's how we pay our bills.
So how have things been recently with the drop in prices? I know times are tough for mining.
Yeah,
companies.
and there's opportunities that represent themselves when this happens too, because there's a lot of the equipment that's tied to the price of Bitcoin. So when you see these drops, the related miners also drop in price. So there's some opportunities there to buy equipment, by the dip on the other side of it, by the actual machines at a lower price point. So certainly it does create some different challenges in terms of, running a business that we rely on Bitcoin revenue generation from. But, that's why we have NSPB in place now, that we can start modeling out these different scenarios and stress testing and things like that. So
say that again. What's in place?
NSPB, our NetSuite planning and budgeting solution. So I'm sure you guys want to get into that a little bit.
Well, one of my questions is that I'm going to ask everybody today is, how much of the suite are you using? There's so much, right?
There is so much. And so, what originally happened back in August was we signed with NetSuite with a very fast go live to be on ERP Financials First as of Jan 1. And so we got that in place. We were on QuickBooks, single subsidiary. Obviously, going via SPAC public, QuickBooks isn't going to work out too well. So we actually got live Financials First in January, and then we expanded to the advanced procurement module, and then we're looking at the fixed asset module as well. So we've got a few pieces in place now, did some fun work with suite approvals. We also have the mobile approval capabilities in place, because our structure is that we have these different site locations where these individuals are working out in containers and noisy equipment and stuff they're not behind a desk, so they're not going to be approving things from their desktop. So having that mobile capability was a big piece of the decisioning of why we went with NetSuite, as well as the Oracle brand and all that.
So quick implementation then. When did you sign the deal?
It was August, and then we were live in January. So.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So, luckily it was not a giant company. And like I said, we had the one subsidiary and only a couple of years of historicals to bring in. So, but it was, a large undertaking for sure. And a lot of time and effort going into it, but we got there.
And how big of an org are you? Or maybe how big is the entire company? And then how big's your finance department?
Yeah. So the company, was around 100. The finance department, we had, a handful of us, so there's 6 of us now, still growing like crazy. But that was another big piece of why we went with NetSuite as well as NSPB, is to get as much as automated so we could scale the business without necessarily scaling the headcount as much. And so part of that was automating some of how we actually record our mining activity in NetSuite. So just a little bit of background on Bitcoin mining. So we participate in what are called pools, and so we contribute kind of our hash rate, which is our computing power, to this pool. And in return, we get our proportional share when a block on the blockchain is solved. So when that happens, we have our activity in what's called wallets, and it houses all the transactions that have occurred, and that is in a format that we ingest into NetSuite, and then we have configured a solution within NetSuite that records all that activity for sale activity, withdrawal activity, transfer activity, and then it records the appropriate transactions for that, as well as the gain loss treatment, and establishes our FIFO stack for our crypto holdings. And so,
wow, so all of your crypto is your holdings, your transactions are all flowing into NetSuite, and they're instantly reflected in the financials.
Yep. So we have a process that's built that we can run that allows us to process all the transactions. And then, there's always, a couple ones that need to be manually reviewed. So there's a review queue that we process. But yeah, we can bring it in and process it accordingly. And then similarly, we have a fun impairment exercise that we have to do where we have to value given the volatility, our Bitcoin holdings on a daily basis. We run that process on a monthly batch. And so that one is also automated, where we're going out to Coinbase because we have to pull from a US-based index for the pricing. And so we go out to Coinbase, have it pull in, and then it evaluates our holdings and records the related impairment.
Wow.
Also automated.
And Jason, I don't know if we asked, what is your role?
So I was brought on to be the director of finance project management. So I started off assisting them in an independent consultant capacity to implement NetSuite. I was doing that for a little bit after I left my prior company, helping out a couple different companies. And then Griid offered me to come on full time, and I gladly accepted to continue the journey. So that's kind of how I came to be at Griid. And then prior to that, I was in the software space for about a decade with a company that's local to where I am. And then prior to that, I was in the banking space, going through that financial meltdown fun. And
so you're a CPA that did audit, did some banking, and then became a NetSuite implementation specialist. And so that was kind of your niche, and you were freelancing that.
Yeah. So, with my experience in the NetSuite products, as well as just my FP&A background, and kind of, operating in a space where you wear many different hats, I kind of had a good breadth of knowledge. So I was doing that alongside establishing some other, visualization layers for another company I was helping out too, just to kind of build out some BI reporting for them.
So jumping around, going back to the NetSuite implementation, you said, we went through it real quick, I think you said you're on procurement.
Yeah, advanced procurement.
Okay, so that is purchase orders.
Yeah, so purchase orders, purchase requisitions. We're standing up a bunch of catalogs too within the solution, so that way our director of procurement and his team will be able to start leveraging kind of the recurring buys. Some of our purchases are non-recurring, so going through and figuring out what is the recurring, setting up the catalogs, trying to integrate that with Jira as well alongside of it. So that's come into play as well, and it's been going great.
And fixed assets.
So yeah, that's what kind of the work in progress still. So we have 80,000 different fixed assets, the majority of which are the individual miners themselves. So there's a need to track all these different things, since we have different legal subsidiaries and the intercompany accounting that goes along with the transfer activity with those different pieces of.
I imagine an entity for each mining location.
Yep, exactly.
And when you say miners, I'm picturing people with pickaxes, but that's not what we're talking about, right?
No, we're actually talking about, just little computers essentially that are specialized for, Bitcoin mining. So they have these application-specific integrated chips in them, ASIC chips.
Yeah, driving up the cost of my graphics card for my gaming PC,
Yeah,
right?
sadly,
That's what-
all those card issues are coming into play. But we've actually recently established a relationship with Intel, which was out in the news, where we're going to be working with them kind of on some next-gen chip activity, to hopefully bolster that up.
And then you're also using NetSuite planning and budgeting.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
the key benefit there is, since we're on NetSuite ERP, all the metadata structures and everything get synced up. We're able to pull in actuals on a scheduled overnight. And then during close, if we want, we can do, ad hoc pulls to get, any big entries that come in midday,
Yeah.
that type of cycle. But also it allows us to create the drivers that we wanted for projection purposes, and the reporting and dashboard capabilities is why we went with NSPB.
So what's kind of the next steps for you guys? Like, what, as far as, obviously you said you're going to go public via SPAC, but
Mhm.
I mean, is that NetSuite going to help you with that? It's
And
like-
I have a related
Okay.
question sort of around that, which is, what was the motivation to go from QuickBooks to NetSuite? I take it was you wanted to go public.
Yeah, it was the going public, as well as the scalability, and obviously being able to accommodate the multiple subsidiaries, which can't really do so well in QuickBooks, as well as the crypto accounting. Prior to putting in the solution we did with the ERP, it was a very manual process that required third-party vendors to facilitate some of the processing of the data and returning it back to us, which obviously costs money. So looking at it from that vein to kind of reduce the spend, as well as just bring it in-house, and position us, to be public in a more compliant fashion. And so one of the aspects that we did implement as part of that was a third-party solution from StrongPoint, who are here on site as well, to facilitate some of the, more SOX compliant related control activity and document it natively within NetSuite. So hopefully our auditors will be nice and happy when they come in and can see all the changes that were made, who requested it, when, who approved it. So that was another big piece, is having that all within the NetSuite ecosystem.
How many subsidiaries?
We are up to 8 now, and we have kind of a pipeline of growth that we'll continue to grow those different sites, and each one will be its own subsidiary.
So tell us about the sites. Where are they? You mentioned hydropower,
So
nuclear.
So we were exploring nuclear. We got most of them are in Tennessee, New York. We have a site up there. That's the hydro site up in New York. But yeah, we go where the power costs can be negotiated to be favorable to us and make sense.
And you mentioned, this is a big selling point, marketing point for Griid, is it's carbon free or carbon neutral.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work?
Yeah, so it's kind of like I mentioned before. It's how we're procuring our power. So when you look at a traditional power provider, they generate electricity. If it doesn't get used, it kind of just goes out on the grid and just gets wasted. And so what we've gone and done is negotiated with these power companies to say, hey, we'll take that and use it instead of it going to waste. And then if there's a draw on it that they need it for consumers or everyone else, we'll curtail our equipment and return that power to the grid so it gets used.
Okay, because that was a question I was going to hit you with, which is even if it's carbon neutral, you're taking energy from the grid that could be used by consumers, but you're just taking the excess.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
And so returning it when they need it, and we curtail our equipment, so that way it doesn't get wasted. So like I said, we're about 74% today carbon neutral, with targeting 90% end of 23.
And are you just mining Bitcoin, or are you mining other?
Strictly Bitcoin.
Strictly Bitcoin.
Yep.
And why that? Why not other cryptos?
We wanted to focus strictly on Bitcoin, and that was kind of the founders' belief, is that let's keep it to Bitcoin, and we didn't want to explore other cryptos at this point. So
just keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Okay. Well, I'm having trouble finding fault with this, David. I'm a crypto skeptic most of the time, but this actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah, no, they got a good business model and a good team structure, and the accounting side of it's a lot of fun. So that's why I was like, yeah, I'll go for this ride, go for the SPAC, and get things set up and automate things as much as possible. That's kind of what I enjoy.
Do you think that the rules are going to change, the standards are going to change, so that it's not just impairment downward, but you can mark to market?
That sure would be nice, because we obviously before the tanking of as of late with the Bitcoin prices, if there's any dips in there, you got to write it down. So then it's almost misleading, right? Because you look at it, everything's written down, but price goes back up, and you're still holding it and reporting it at that lower level. So, it's always fun. But when we sell it, we realize those gains, and it kind of comes back. But in the meantime, if you look at the balance sheet, it's it's kind of, you got to look at the different reserves that are there for the impairment reserve to kind of tease out what the true value is.
Yeah, it's not really helpful for investors. Is that an issue with the SPAC, like explaining that to people, or?
No, I don't think so, because with the disclosures and everything else, it's the right now we're just going back and forth with the SEC on comment letters and responses, and SEC is always not the quickest.
Are they're giving you a hard time?
Not a hard time, just making sure that, we're addressing all their questions and needs. And I think some of it might be coming down to with the Futures Trading Commission as well, with, who's going to oversee the crypto space, because I think there's been some back and forth there between the SEC and the Futures Commission on who is actually going to have that oversight. So I think that might be coming into play. I don't know that for sure. I'm just speculating, but I believe that's probably what's dragging out some of the S4 registration updates, and then the comment letters back and forth is probably due to that, but not entirely sure.
So then you guys ultimately, you're mining. You find a coin. Are you selling that the next day? Are you sitting on this for a long time? Or what's kind of the business model, I guess, right?
Yeah, it all depends. So we're not holding for investment right now. We're really using it to fund growth and operating activities. So we will typically mine and then sell pretty quickly, but we do mine and hold. We sell it to fund our operations as needed, essentially, and for equipment buys and things like that.
And you said you're part of a pool. Is that right?
Yeah, so a lot of Bitcoin miners and crypto miners will participate in what's called a pool. So you kind of get your collective computing power together, and then you get your proportional share when a reward is generated from the blockchain. And so that, is a pretty typical thing. And so you'll see that across a lot of the space where you're participating in a pool.
And you're going public via a SPAC, or that you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Why a SPAC? Why not a traditional IPO?
Just quicker. I think that's the name of the game, is that, the speed to go public via an IPO versus a SPAC is very different. But obviously there's a lot more scrutiny on SPACs, which again is probably causing some of the delay with the SEC. Is just they want to make sure that, they understand our business and what we're doing, and, what that's going to look like versus a traditional IPO, a little bit more costly and a little more time intensive to go that route.
I imagine that when you started the SPAC process, probably like a year ago or
yeah, it
takes a while.
Yeah, it does take a while, and there's obviously a lot of NDAs in place and things that can't be discussed back then. But yeah, there's negotiations going on, and then we announced in November 21 that we would be going via the SPAC.
And the SEC then in the interim started to get hard on SPACs,
Right. Yep. Yeah. So I think that's contributing some of this delay in our listing going out. So
yeah.
So hopefully, we've gone back and forth with them a few times on the comment letters and everything. So hopefully we'll have that wrapped up and satisfy, all their questions.
Fingers crossed, right?
Fingers crossed indeed.
So David, I derailed one of your questions, but I thought it was a really good question. And
I don't even remember it now.
It was about the future.
Oh yeah. So yeah, what is the future? One thing I was just thinking sitting here, if you get too good at mining, you're going to produce too much supply and the price will fail, and now you have no business, right? So, but what's the future in general? What's next? What is your job? Do you have to start implementing with NetSuite as you guys grow?
Yeah, so always continuing to look to evaluate, where can we leverage NetSuite for our business, and how, we can optimize the solution, as well as, what other partner solutions might be out there that might be a good fit to add into the ecosystem. So we're always looking at that and exploring the capabilities. That's kind of part of why I'm here today or this week, is to kind of understand, latest developments and things like that, and keep up to speed. So always looking to refine and enhance and automate, provide better visibility to our leadership team in terms of what the finances are doing, give them the visualizations. If they're not akin to reading numbers on a page, they could see some graphics and things like that. But really just, trying to understand what's out there and how we can leverage the technologies that are available to us.
Jason, do you personally hold Bitcoin?
I do not.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I'm a USD guy.
USD. And so for our listeners, tell us the difference.
I don't know. I never got into it. Prior to joining Griid, I wasn't very involved in the crypto space, to be perfectly honest. And it was just, I've taken some riskier investments in different areas, but never got into the crypto space. And I don't know, just haven't.
So you're just never a crypto bro who joined a crypto company. For you,
I'm a finance bro that joined a crypto company.
The excitement for you is implementing NetSuite, essentially.
Yeah.
That's your excitement, is doing that.
Yeah, and the planning aspects, and helping craft what that solution looks like so it fits the needs of the business. And I think I mentioned it before. It really doesn't matter what industry or business you're in. Like, NSPB can be crafted around your business to fit your needs. And so, we had a good implementation team that helped understand what we do and incorporate that into how we crafted the solution. So that way, it fits our business model, which is a little bit unique and not as common as more traditional people might see with customers and everything else, because we don't have any. So we have, big on spend and obviously generate revenue in an atypical fashion with mining Bitcoin. And so I think that was the key piece for us. But yeah, that was kind of my bread and butter and what I enjoy doing.
Cool.
So Bitcoin has a fixed supply.
Mm-hmm.
So the number of Bitcoin will decline over time. How does that impact a mining operation like yours?
Yeah, so there's a concept called halving, and once you reach a certain amount of coins, they kind of have it, and so I think it's supposed to be extinguished by 2140. So I don't think I'll be around for when the supply of Bitcoin runs out. But the way that the Bitcoin was designed is that these halving events occur so that it doesn't get mined out like super fast, but eventually it will, past our lifetimes. But that, I think, when we'll start to see the transition over to more fees for transacting and supporting the blockchain transactions that are occurring.
And so the data centers that you have that are mining, or the mining centers that are mining the coins, will flip over to facilitating transactions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think there'll just be a different fee structure that will be kind of the rewards that were typically the blockchain. The Bitcoin come from the blockchain.
And what do you see as the as an insider in this industry, where do you see Bitcoin headed? I mean, David and I have been skeptical about Bitcoin as a payment method, right? It's slow, it's expensive, it doesn't really improve on anything we do currently. Obviously, there's the store of value idea, the digital gold kind of concept, but it seems like nothing has, really, we don't really know what it is yet.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I think, the opportunity that exists out there, just with the, the security around following how, a transaction was supported by our efforts in computing and participating in solving that transaction, and just the verifiability of it. So, it's very hard to manipulate the blockchain. So I think that aspect of it can have many different use cases going forward. And, the Bitcoin component of that, being one of the first early cryptos around, will have that presence to be that forerunner for it.
Any more questions, David?
No, it sounds like, Jason, you're in a really good spot, I think, from a implementation process, right? This one's totally crazy. It's all new. And so now going forward, if you, one day when you move on in your career, you're going to have all this expertise of implementing NetSuite in ways you had to invent ways to implement it.
And, we leverage some of our counterparts that are here today, or NetSuite partners that are here today, to kind of help us identify how to do that. Because you're right. It was, complete unknown territory for a lot of people to understand what we're trying to do, and obviously automate the way that we did was very unique. So we're kind of first to do it, but excited to be a part of that and excited to see how it's working.
Do you want to give a shout out to your NetSuite partner?
Yeah, Prolecto. Don't know if they're here today, but they were instrumental in helping us with some of the automation. I could mention StrongPoint too, were key. And our implementation teams from NetSuite themselves were key in getting things stood up and running in the way that we needed to, especially in the ERP and that quick deployment. But our NSPT team was excellent as well in understanding kind of what we do, how we do it, so they could build out the solution the way we needed to.
So Jason, if any of our listeners want to get a hold of you or learn more about Griid,
come work for Griid.
They do?
Yeah, they can shoot me an email. It's just jason.sheehan@griid.com, and just shoot me a note and respond. I'm on LinkedIn too, so yeah, connect with me out there.
We'll put your LinkedIn in the show notes.
Yeah, perfect.
Great. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.